Have you ever stopped to think about what you would do if you only had 6 hours to choose between everything you built in life and the only person you truly love? Imagine waking up in the middle of the night and realizing that, before dawn, you need to make the hardest decision of your life. A choice that involves not only you, but the fate of someone who trusts you, who believes in you, but who is being betrayed in a way you never imagined possible. This is the story of Ricardo Valenti, a powerful businessman who built an empire with his own hands. At 45, he had everything: mansions, luxury cars, political influence, and a respected name in the most exclusive circles of the country. But on that cold winter night, as he looked out the window of his private office, Ricardo discovered a brutal truth. All his power meant nothing in the face of the emptiness he felt inside. Have you ever experienced that moment when you realize you've conquered the whole world, but lost yourself in the process? On the other side of town, Marina slept peacefully, unaware that her life was about to crumble. She had loved Ricardo for 10 years, believed in him, dreamed of a future with him. But there was something she didn't know. Something so devastating that, when she discovered it, she would have to choose between forgiveness and revenge, between starting over and destroying everything. And the worst part was that Ricardo knew. He had all the evidence. 3 months earlier, he had discovered a betrayal involving not only his best friend and business partner, but also the woman he loved. The clock struck 12:47 a.m. There were less than 6 hours until dawn. 6 hours for Ricardo to decide whether he would reveal the truth and risk losing Marina forever, or keep everything a secret and live the rest of his life with that crushing weight on his conscience. Stay with me until the end, because what happened at morning will make you question everything you think about. Love, loyalty, and courage on the solid oak table, scattered like pieces of a macabre puzzle, were the documents that proved everything. Emails, photos, bank statements, recorded conversations. Eduardo, his best friend since college, the man he considered a brother, wasn't just stealing millions from the company. He was orchestrating a perfect heist, taking control of Ricardo's empire and keeping Marina for himself. All coldly planned, like a business operation, as if people were merely assets to be acquired. But there was one detail that changed everything. Marina knew nothing. The evidence clearly showed that she was being manipulated, used as a pawn in Eduardo's dirty game. She was innocent, and Ricardo had the power to destroy Eduardo with a single phone call. He could crush him financially, ruin his reputation, send him to prison. What would you do in this situation? Would you use all your power to get revenge, or would you choose a different path? Ricardo rose from the leather armchair and walked to the balcony. Down below, the city slept under a blanket of lights that blinked indifferently to his torment. The cold morning wind cut his face, but he barely felt it. His mind was divided between two versions of himself: the ruthless businessman who always won, and the passionate man who had never learned to be vulnerable. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the choice Ricardo made that night wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't the logical decision, nor the safest one. It was something much riskier, much more human. And it all began when he realized he had exactly 3 hours and 15 minutes to become the man Marina deserved, or remain what he always was. The phone vibrated on the table, a message from Eduardo. The message was short, but laden with cynicism. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., meeting with investors. Prepare to sign your exit from the company. It's best for all of us. Ricardo felt his blood run cold. Edward wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He was so confident in his plan that he was already acting as if he had won. At that moment, something broke inside Ricardo. It wasn't anger. It wasn't a desire for revenge. It was something much deeper, the painful realization that he had spent his entire life building walls around himself, calling it power, when in reality he was only isolating himself from everything that truly mattered. He looked again at the evidence scattered on the table and realized he had two completely opposite choices ahead of him. He could use those documents as weapons, Destroy Eduardo publicly, expose every lie, every betrayal, every stolen penny. His lawyers would love this case. The press would have a field day. Eduardo would be humiliated, sued, probably imprisoned. Ricardo would keep his empire intact, his reputation as a man who never loses, as a ruthless executive who crushed anyone who dares to betray him. Marina would find out everything through the newspapers, see the headlines, the sordid details exposed on national television. She would know that Ricardo had known about everything for months and chose to hide it. Maybe she would hate him for it. Maybe she would forgive him. But Ricardo would never know if she would stay by his side out of love or pity. Or he could do something he'd never done in his life, be completely vulnerable. Go to Marina before sunrise, place the evidence in her hands, and tell her the naked truth. Admit he'd known for 3 months. Explain why he hadn't told her sooner. Give her the power to choose her own destiny, even if it meant losing her forever. It would be risking everything with no guarantee of return. It would be relinquishing the control he so cherished. It would be truly trusting someone for the first time in decades. If this topic resonates with you, if you've ever found yourself at a crossroads where you had to choose between protecting your pride or opening your heart, leave a comment below about what has touched you most in this story so far. I want to know, have you ever had to make a decision where the most difficult path was the most honest one? Because stories like this only make sense when we share them, when we realize we're not alone in these internal battles we all face. And if you're following this narrative and feeling that it touches something real within you, give the video a like. It may seem like a small thing, but it's what allows this message to reach other people who also need to hear that they're not alone in life's impossible choices. And subscribe to the channel, because your participation here is what makes this space grow and transform into a true community where we can talk about love, betrayal, redemption, and all those deep things that nobody likes to admit out loud, but that everyone feels. Now, going back to that decisive early morning, Ricardo picked up the phone with trembling hands. The clock showed to 34. There was still time. It was still possible to change the course of that story. He typed a message to Marina, deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. Words seemed insufficient to express the turmoil he felt. How do you summarize in a few lines 3 months of silence, 10 years of love, and a betrayal involving the two people he trusted most? Finally, he gave up writing. Some things can't be said by text message. Some truths require looking into someone's eyes, feeling their breath, seeing their tears. Ricardo put on his coat, grabbed the envelope with all the evidence, and went out the door. The car engine roared in the silent garage. As he drove through the empty streets of the sleeping city, he had no idea if he was making the best decision of his life or committing the biggest mistake that could never be corrected. The city was immersed in a heavy, almost suffocating silence, the kind that only exists in the loneliest hours of the early morning. Ricardo gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his fingers were white. Each red light seemed like an eternity. Each empty block echoed the weight of the decision he was about to make. He was no longer the calculating businessman who planned every move 3 steps in advance. At that moment, he was just a frightened man, driving towards a truth that could shatter everything he knew. Marina lived 20 minutes away, in an apartment she insisted on keeping even after Ricardo offered her a luxurious penthouse. She always said that place had soul, that there she could be herself, far from the spotlight and the pressures of his world. Ricardo had never fully understood this need for independence, but now, as he approached that modest building in the quiet neighborhood, he was beginning to understand. Marina always knew how to separate what was real from what was merely appearance. She had a clarity he had never possessed. The clock on the dashboard showed 3:12. The sky was still dark, but there was that subtle promise of light on the distant horizon. That premonition that dawn was coming, whether he wanted it or not. Ricardo parked the car in front of the building and stood there, motionless, with the envelope in his lap. Inside that envelope was the power to destroy lives, to reveal lies, to change destinies. But it also held the possibility of liberation, of genuine transformation, of a new beginning. He took a deep breath and got out of the car. Each step toward the intercom felt like it weighed a ton. His fingers trembled as he pressed the button for her apartment. The sound echoed in the silence of the night, once, twice, and then Marina's sleepy voice came through the intercom. "Hello, who is it?" Ricardo closed his eyes. There was no turning back. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened in the following minutes changed not only Ricardo and Marina's lives, but also how they understood the meaning of love, loyalty, and courage. "It's me, Marina. I need to talk to you." There was silence on the other side, a silence heavy with surprise, concern, and that intimacy that only exists between two people who know each other deeply. The door unlocked with an electronic click, and Ricardo climbed the 3 flights of stairs as if he were walking to his own trial. When Marina opened the door, still wearing a simple robe band with her hair loose over her shoulders, Ricardo felt his heart clench. She was so different from his world. There was no ostentation, no social masks, just that genuine presence that made him feel, at the same time, at home and completely exposed. Her eyes were confused, but also worried. "Ricardo, it's almost 4 in the morning. What happened?" He entered the apartment and placed the envelope on the coffee table. Marina looked at the object as if it were a bomb about to explode. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. Ricardo had built an empire based on strategy, control, and absolute power over every situation. He knew how to manipulate numbers, people, entire markets. But there in that small, cozy room, in front of the only person who truly mattered, all that power meant nothing. "Before you open this, I need to tell you something I should have said 3 months ago." Ricardo's voice trembled, broken by a vulnerability he had never allowed anyone to see. "Eduardo isn't who you think he is, and I'm worse than you imagine, because I know this and I didn't tell you." Marina sat slowly on the sofa, her eyes fixed on him, trying to process the words. Ricardo began to speak. He told her about the documents he had discovered by chance, about the millions embezzled from the company, about the elaborate plan to remove him from power. And then, his voice almost fading, he spoke about the evidence proving Eduardo's involvement with her, about how everything had been orchestrated to manipulate her emotionally while destroying everything Ricardo had built. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what Marina was about to discover inside that envelope wasn't just about financial betrayal or unbridled ambition. It was about how money and power can corrupt even the people we swear we know better than anyone else. Write this down. Truth hurts, but sets you free if you understand that sometimes the most painful revelation is also the only one that can save us. Marina picked up the envelope, her hands trembling. Ricardo watched her every movement, every breath, every blink. He knew that face by heart, but he had never seen that expression of utter disbelief mixed with fear of what he was about to discover. She opened it slowly, as if by doing so more slowly she could postpone the pain that would surely come. The first documents were bank statements, million-dollar transfers to offshore accounts, fake contracts, emails between Eduardo and investors planning a hostile takeover of the company. Marina flipped through page after page, and Ricardo could see the confusion turning into shock. But then she came across the photos, images of her with Eduardo at dinners, text message conversations where he declared his feelings, whispered promises that now, in the harsh light of truth, were revealed to be strategically calculated. He said you didn't love me anymore, that you were only keeping me for convenience. Marina's voice was a fragile thread about to snap. He said you were planning to marry the daughter of a Japanese investor. Ricardo closed his eyes. Each of Eduardo's lies had been carefully crafted to push her away, to make her question years of shared history. And the worst part was that he, Ricardo, had fueled those lies by hiding behind work, constant travel, and endless meetings that always seemed more important than simply being present. "I could have destroyed him 3 months ago, Marina." I could have used all my power, all my influence. My lawyers begged me to act immediately. But I was paralyzed because any move I made would hurt you too, Ricardo knelt before her, something he had never done for anyone in his entire life. And then I realized a devastating truth. I spent years building an empire, accumulating power, but I never learned to simply trust. I never learned to be vulnerable with you. Tears streamed down Marina's face as she processed not only Eduardo's betrayal, but also Ricardo's quiet courage in choosing to protect her instead of protecting his pride. Now I want to delve even deeper into this, because what was happening in that room wasn't just about discovering a betrayal. It was about two people finally allowing themselves to be completely honest with each other, without games, without protections. Marina dropped the documents on the floor and covered her face with her hands. Sobs came in waves, each carrying months of confusion, doubts planted by Eduardo, and securities she had kept silent. Ricardo wanted to hug her, but something held him back. He wasn't sure if he still had that right, if she would want his comfort after. Knowing he had kept that secret for so long, why didn't you tell me sooner? The question came out muffled through tears. Why did you let me keep believing him? Why did you let me question my feelings for you? Ricardo felt each word like a blade. Because that was exactly what he had been asking himself every night for the past 3 months. Why am I a coward, Marina? Why have I spent my whole life controlling everything around me and never learned to deal with something I couldn't manipulate or buy? I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you would make a decision based on anger, on resentment, and not on what you really felt. Marina lifted her face, her eyes red but intense. So you decided for me, you decided to keep me in the dark to protect me. No, Ricardo shook his head, and for the first time in decades, tears began to stream down his face as well. I made the most selfish decision possible. I kept you close to me for 3 more months because I couldn't face the possibility of losing you. And that made me just as manipulative as Eduardo, only in a different way. The silence that settled between them was dense, filled with years of unspoken words, hidden vulnerabilities, and real love stifled by pride and fear. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten almost imperceptibly. Dawn was approaching, and with it, the moment of ultimate truth. Marina slowly stood up and walked to the window. Ricardo remained where he was, on his knees, awaiting the verdict. That could destroy or rebuild everything. She stayed there for minutes that seemed like hours, watching the city begin to awaken. And then she turned, and in her eyes there was something Ricardo didn't expect to see. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened next showed that true redemption doesn't come from grand gestures or empty promises, but from the courage to allow oneself to start over even when everything seems lost. Do you know what hurts me the most? Ricardo, Marina spoke with a calmness that seemed impossible given everything she had just discovered. It's not Eduardo's betrayal. Ambitious men have always existed and always will. What really hurts is realizing that you never trusted me enough to let me make my own decisions. You loved me, but you treated me like someone who needed to be protected from reality. Ricardo felt those words cut deeper than any angry accusation could. Because she was right, completely right. He had spent so much time building walls around her, calling it protection, when in reality he was just replicating the same pattern of control he used in business. But you came here today, Marina continued, and now there was something different in her voice. You could have kept this secret forever. You could have manipulated the whole situation behind the scenes, destroyed Eduardo without me ever knowing. But you chose to trust me with the truth, even knowing that it could mean losing me. The sun began to stream into the room through the window, tinging everything with that characteristic golden light of dawn. Ricardo was still on his knees, vulnerable in a way he had never allowed himself to be in front of anyone. Marina walked over to him and extended her hand. Get up, Ricardo. People who truly love each other don't kneel before one another. They stand side by side. He took her hand and stood up, not fully understanding what was happening. Marina held his face in her hands, looking deeply into his eyes. I don't know if I can fully forgive you right now. I don't know how long it will take to rebuild the trust that was broken. But I know you finally did the right thing, even if it was the hardest thing, and that counts. That means there's still hope for both of us. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what Marina and Ricardo decided that morning wasn't a fairy tale ending where everything magically resolves itself. It was the beginning of a much more real and much more difficult journey. In the weeks that followed, Ricardo lost a great deal. Eduardo was publicly exposed. The lawsuits cost millions, and the press feasted on the details of the corporate betrayal. Ricardo's reputation as the ruthless and invincible businessman was tarnished. Some investors distanced themselves, questioning his judgment. He had to rebuild alliances, prove his competence again, and face distrustful glances in boardrooms. But when he returned home every night and found Marina there, not hidden away in a separate apartment, but sharing the same space, the same meals, the same honest conversations about fears and hopes, Ricardo understood something fundamental. He had traded absolute power for something infinitely more valuable, a real partnership, built on truth and not on control. Marina had also changed. She was no longer the woman who accepted being shielded from reality. Now she insisted on participating in important decisions, on questioning, on disagreeing when necessary, and Ricardo learned to listen, to consider perspectives that he would have simply ignored before. They argued more than before, but they also laughed more, cried together, and built something genuine. The dawn of that morning didn't bring a perfect ending. It brought something better, the chance to start over as better people, more honest, more courageous. Ricardo discovered that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the only real form of connection. And Marina learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing not to let the past steal the future. 6 months later, as they drank coffee together on the balcony and watched another sunrise, Marina looked at Ricardo and said something simple, yet full of meaning. It was worth it. All the pain, all the uncertainty. Choosing the truth was worth it. And Ricardo, the man who once thought that power was everything, smiled and replied, "It's always worth it when the choice is made with courage. If you've made it this far, it's because this story touched something real inside you. Maybe you've already faced an impossible decision between protecting your pride and following your heart. Maybe you know someone who is living through exactly this dilemma right now. Comment below. This message was for me. I want to know that you were here, that you followed Ricardo and Marina's entire journey to the end. And if this story made you reflect, if it made you feel something real, leave a like on the video. It's not just a mechanical gesture. It's you saying that stories like this deserve to be told, that there's still room for us to talk about love, redemption, and courage in a deep and honest way. Subscribe to the channel, because here we don't create superficial content. We explore intense stories about decisions that change destinies, about real people facing conflicts that don't have easy answers. If you want to continue on this journey of reflection and genuine emotion, hit that subscribe button. And there's a video over here that complements this topic, an equally intense story about choices and consequences. Click and continue watching it with me. Let's go through this together.